Hi, I'm Caroline. Welcome to the Stylish Pen, where Susan Scott and I have authentic conversations on the sometimes heartbreaking world of writing, editing, and publishing. Today, we're going to take an in-depth look at what your editor is doing when you hand over your manuscript. Everybody's favorite subject.
Exactly. And I think the first title we had for this is Why is My Editor So Slow? Right.
Yeah.
What is that person doing? Yeah. What could
That's
possibly
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess you've just you've finished this manuscript that you've worked months, years, spent countless hours working on. You hand it to your editor, and your editor goes, "Thanks," and then they disappear. And having been on that end of it, I know that that's the moment where I just sit by a wall and like slowly bang my head against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard, and but I think writers need to learn to be really patient, because now your editor has kicked into high gear.
Yeah.
And they're entering your story, right?
That's a beautiful way to put it, I think. And that's interesting. So probably it would be fun if we talk about your frustration with me at some point. That we might as well just go there too. But yeah, no, it's a really interesting thing, because so when you were working on your memoir, we would talk sort of periodically while you were doing things, and then I think there was a period of time where I just went into it and disappeared, went into it. So that was really, really interesting. And I think the thing is, editing is such a mysterious process if people aren't engaged in it at that level. And there's no way for them to know. Like, why would they know what goes on behind the scenes? It's impossible to know.
And they kind of shouldn't. Now that I'm thinking about it, you kind of, I mean, I edit people's work too, but when I'm editing people's work, so I do more developmental editing, but I know when I'm editing people's work, I spend a lot of time just thinking about it, ruminating, having discussions with myself, right? I don't know and I know you said that for you, it was, you had to like let my family into your head.
That was huge. I mean, it's because and so for people who don't know, you have this beautiful draft of this family. It's your memoir, but it's all this family story too, and it's really complex. It goes back several generations, and a lot of geographies and a lot of kind of world history, and how to make that a really engaging story. And I mean, if an editor is a good fit, that person will be interested in those things. And I love all those things. So I love that idea, and I love talking about them. But then I realized too that I really, to be of service to the manuscript, and that's what you want that editor to be, I had to actually like let all of your relatives move into my head, like lock, stock, and barrel. I had to kind of shut down a number of things, including like feeding my family and minor things like that, put on hold, and then like take on this whole. I thought this is actually what it is, so that I would understand. Okay, here's this person, this is the time frame, so I could even read it. First of all, to be of any use to you, any use to the story, and also to keep in mind all those editorial pieces, which is, wait, does it, is this piece out of sequence? Are there contradictions? Are there things that need to be fact checked? All that stuff, right? So the editor's job is to, of course, be your first reader, but also read to give the writer feedback about what might need fixing. So to do that, yeah, that's the joke, is your entire genealogy moved into my brain. And then I had to kind of live with them for a while, and you gave me all this fantastic, like, primary material too, right? So I could read their voices and see what you had done with it. So yeah, that's a big commitment, and it's such a fantastic commitment. I mean, it's a joy. It's amazing, but it takes time for all that.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I really appreciated too, because it's hard to do it when you're on the like receiving end of the editor's work, but it's
Yeah,
also reading it in a way that you're also, as an editor, reading it in a way that you know that it will be appealing to other people, right? Because this
exactly.
wasn't just a passion project for me where I was like, okay, and then when I'm 800 years old, I'm going to leave it to my family.
Yeah,
I know this is something I'm trying to get published. And so it's also that idea of having to cut things. I don't think I was really bad about it, but I know people get really very sensitive about cutting things that maybe are not appropriate or won't be appealing or don't really matter to the story you're telling. I
yeah.
think that that's a big thing to remember too.
Yeah, and that's huge, and that's the difference between finding a really good editor to work with as opposed to workshopping it with your writing group, or or exchanging it with with another writer. The editor's job really is to be that stand-in for
Mm-hmm.
the ideal readers that you want to attract in the world, out there in the world. So that person's job, the editor's job, is to help you get the material to that place where it's going to speak to perfect strangers, right? Not to people in your writing group who already love what you're doing, or not to your distant cousin who adores your stories. Like, no, perfect
Reading my book.
strangers who are going to shell out 30 bucks or whatever for your book because something about it spoke to them, even though they don't know why, and they're going to enter that world. So yeah, the editor is a really safeguards
Mm-hmm.
the integrity of the work for a whole bunch of strangers who you've never even met. So yeah, it's a complicated kind of a
I think that's so powerful though. And because it's that idea that you don't want an editor who's just going to tell you that everything's great. And I mean, you know, I try to be very supportive and tell people, yeah, this is, we're on the right track. We're moving forward. It's, I can see it's getting there. But at the same time, you're, I think you need to, as a writer, open yourself up to the hard truth that, you're not a snowflake. So you need to do some work still. There needs to be some work needs to be done.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So, and I think that that's because as an editor, it is hard to tell somebody something isn't working,
Yeah.
but
It's
it's
by
so
definition,
important.
that's your job, right? Your job is to say, okay, you're on the right track. Hopefully, it is the right track. But here's the work we can do from here on out to take it to the next level, or to get it to a place where this is really going to sing. Or I always think of it as that the story itself has its own life, and at some point the writer and the editor have to be able to respect what the actual life of the story is, and then do whatever needs to be done so the story can come to life, and then the writer can step back, and get her wardrobe ready for her world tour. That's great. And editor can just make sure everything's spelled properly in the acknowledgments. That's great. And then the book can do its work, right? It can do
Yeah.
its work out in the world. But
Oh,
it's
I
a
like that.
mysterious kind of alchemy, right? And it's just so mysterious to people. Like, what? How does this even? What are they doing? Why is it taking so long? Oh, I have one. So I love this one too because Janice Sewardney, famous Canadian editor, I asked her one time. I said, "When do you do the editing?" And she said, "Oh, I at night at home with a big glass of Merlot." She said, I can't do any of it at the office because the office all day, every day, like
It's too
editors who might be
busy.
working with publishers or even freelancers are often doing admin, or right, they're doing the
Right.
business of
Yeah.
it. But the actual work of settling into that deep, quiet space to work on a manuscript, that's completely, often into the wee hours of the night. Like, it's very that kind of deep, private engagement with
Yeah.
a you need quiet to do that.
There's another editor that I took a course with her, and one of the things she said too is she approaches the manuscript as a reader would.
Yeah,
So it's not that she reads the whole thing from start to finish and then goes back. I mean, you do go back and forth, but the first kind of edit is right. as she goes, because if something isn't clear, if something doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
there's a good chance that the reader is already thinking that too. And
exactly.
I really
That's part
appreciated
of it.
that as a technical note. I thought that was really good. And
Yeah.
to add to just sort of that next level too is why might take a while is partly because when I was looking for someone to edit my book, I went on people's recommendations at first, and I talked to editors, and I had an editor who read my book, my first manuscript, and it was fine. She was good. I think she was great. Speaking with her, she was great.
Mhm.
But mine was nonfiction, and she wanted a lot more fiction that I wasn't comfortable with.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because then I went to a conference, and that's where I found you. And there was one other person too that I don't know. You were talking, and I right away I was like, okay, no, 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 no. I need to investigate this further. Like there was a connection past
Hmm.
editor client, at least on my end.
It's interesting.
And so it was just the way you were speaking, the way you were talking about words. I don't even remember. Like this is going to sound horrible, and I don't mean it that way, but I don't even really remember what your workshop was about. I just, I
That's
just
okay. All you remember is that I cast a spell and it worked. Like
But
that's
you
it.
did, and it was just the way I think the way you talked about words, the way you talked about sentence structure and thinking about books and the
Hmm.
whole process. It just I connected with it. Like
Right.
it was just that moment of okay, wait, I can't quite let you out of my system yet. There's a lot of people during that week-long workshop, and for the most part, I mean, they were nice people, but not people I'd want to work with. But it was that moment of okay, wait, no, I think like you'll get what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Not that I ever thought that mine was so special, and that I'd have millions of agents trying to find me immediately. I'm still hoping, but that there was just that connection. I don't know that, and then for me, it was true. There was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a great point because I understand that people want to go and look for do a kind of cold call and look for skills and look for and of course you have to do that. You have to do your homework,
Yeah.
but unless that synergy is there, unless there's that kind of kismet between writer and editor, why bother? I mean, you have to have a kind of chemistry, I think, for it to work because you want the editor to love the work as much as you do. So,
Yeah.
that means you have to find someone who really gets it, who gets what you're trying to do, who's invested in it. Because editing is not, your editors do not make neurosurgeon fees. Editors do a lot of what they do because they love literature. They're building. They feel like they're contributing, right? They're very often people oriented who feel that they're really helping to build a culture and enrich the literature and enrich people's lives. So that's a big investment. But again, you have to have a right match. You have to have the right match. You learn a lot from working with an editor who's not a match. You can learn a ton. There's no, I mean, that's a valuable experience too. But if you're, when you're ready, really, if you've got a book manuscript and you really want to work in depth with someone, it's probably a lot more rewarding to find someone where you're on the same wavelength and you can have a good
Oh
relationship.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then also for me, a part of it, and I know we kind of did cross probably some boundaries in terms of that, but the fact that we could talk about books and I could bring you books every week and I could say, this is what I've read, this is what I thought was so genius and so wonderful, and this is a theme that's in my book and I want to explore it some more.
Yeah.
So I found that it just became this intellectual discussion as well about that, not just about my writing, because the more I read, I think I did change things. I did alter things as well. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I mean, for me, I don't think I ever wanted to just hand my book over to you and say, hey, fix this, and we're
Right.
done.
Yeah.
I feel after finishing this that I did a mini university course.
Whether you knew you were coming in for that or not, right? So
But I appreciate it. I mean, it was worth every moment of it. So I think that was the great part. And then, and that was the other thing too, is while you were working on it. I wasn't going in and fixing things. I let you have your space with it as well. And on the side, I was reading more, studying more, learning more, figuring more out, so that the next time I came back to the manuscript, I felt like I was smarter a
Yeah.
little bit when I
That's
came back, each time I came
fantastic.
back. I
I
don't know.
love that. I love that. That, yeah, that's like whatever that is, just bottle it and sell it. I think that's so fantastic because that's the tempting part, right? Okay, you hand off to the editor and then you want to go right back in and start fixing it. No, 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 no. Like take a cruise, take a, take up folk dancing, make notes for your next project, but do not go back in. But what you did was so beautiful because you used that time to enrich your reading and your thinking. And so you did come back to that manuscript with a whole rich kind of deep bench, of knowledge and understanding that you brought back to it. I mean, so that I thought you used your time really wisely. Not that if you had, taken up folk dancing, that would be a bad thing. It would have been great too. But anyway, I'm glad you did what you did because you read so much interesting material. And now you have the ability to look at your own work in relation to all these other works that are out there, which also even helps you with your pitching, right? Because
Oh yeah.
exactly,
Oh,
how to place your work. Yeah.
yeah. And it was COVID, so really I couldn't have done folk dancing if I wanted to.
Or documenting the raccoon in your yard, or like
Yeah,
whatever. There are
that's right.
options. There are options, but
He was sleeping in a tree.
yeah.
But yeah, I think, yeah. And I also, the other thing too that I found, that like just that one little detail, on top of that, was that once you gave it back to me, I never dove in right away. I always just gave it a bit of breathing room I don't know, maybe it needed like air on my computer or
That's good.
something.
That's good.
But I could see some of the comments. So I kind of knew what you were thinking, and that was fine. But it was just that moment to also give it breath so that I didn't approach it.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave my feelings aside and then approach it fresh each time, fresh. Even when I was exhausted, even those moments where I was like, if I read this paragraph one more time.
Right.
But it was just that idea of coming to it fresh, and also trying to read it not as myself, but
Yeah, exactly. Which is the advantage of being away from it for a while,
yeah.
right? You can come back and hear it. I think the other advantage that we had, which would be really interesting if people are working on nonfiction and if they're having conversations with an editor during that process, is we had the advantage of kind of watching real life world events unfold, and be able to reflect on, oh my gosh, right, here's like the anniversary of the Warsaw uprising, for instance, or this is what's happening in real time in Poland, or this is what's happening in Afghanistan or Tajikistan or whatever. I mean, it just helped to realize, yeah, this story, whatever the story is connected still to all these currents out in the world.
Yeah.
And so we could, stuff would come up, and you were really always, as a faithful blogger, commenting on things or draw attention to things. But it helped, it sort of enriched the conversation about the book, because we're thinking about this in terms of these big waves and currents of people in real time. What's happening to Jews? What's happening to women? What's happening to Catholics? What's happening on, just migrants, cross-border issues. There are just so many things to think about in real time
Yeah.
that I think really those conversations enriched how to think about the story as well. So,
And even if you're working in nonfiction, which is like where our hearts are, I think,
yeah,
or I know, but fiction, this actually applies to fiction too, because I was editing a fiction
yeah,
manuscript recently, and she's talking about the environment, and
yeah,
she's talking about forest fires, and I mean, that's happening every day. So it's really, I think, important to also this one director, theater director, once said to me that as a director, you have to know a little bit about everything.
mhm,
And I think it really applies to writers too, or at
yeah,
least you have to know where to be able to find that information. But I think that when you're writing something, and I don't care what you're writing, what genre you're writing in, you need to do that research.
Hmm.
And I think that'll
Yeah.
help you and your editor, actually. And I know that
Yeah.
that's not quite directly editing, but I think it helps.
No, it is, and I think it makes it easier if you're as a like I would say as an editor, I'm definitely a generalist. My heart is always in nonfiction, but I am pretty much a generalist. I find most things really interesting, and although I would not be a good medical editor, for instance, because I wouldn't really know where to go. I would not be the right editor for astrophysicists, but just saying, in case anybody's watching and to know, just keep going if,
Yeah.
if you're thinking about that. But most nonfiction that deals with life and cycles of life and the human story, that is my happy
Yeah.
place, right? I
Yeah, I
understand
agree.
well. So having a writer who's interested in those things too, you've got that just level of interest and depth, and that we're able to bring circle after circle after circle of knowledge and understanding across the generations to
Yep,
bear on a piece. And why not? That's
exactly.
what the human project is all about. So let's do it. Let's get on it.
So to sum all of this up, work with an editor. It is definitely worth it. It'll make you a better person. It'll make your book better.
And save money for like that Merlot on the side or that cappuccino on the side or what,
Absolutely.
those little perks you need to keep the relationship well oiled. Yeah.
Yeah, invite your editor out for a coffee every now and then.
Beautiful. Hope everybody enjoyed this tips
Yes,
for.
yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to like and follow us and sign up for our YouTube channel. And we will see you next time with another behind the scenes look.
Love it. See you later.